Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie. Funding for Chautauqua Sunrise is provided in part by the Chautauqua County Industrial Development Agency, with offices in Jamestown and Dunkirk, helping businesses to prosper throughout Chautauqua County. From supporting people with disabilities to enjoy great lives, to providing health care services that are available to anyone, the Resource Center has been improving our county for more than 60 years. Learn more about how the Resource Center makes a positive difference in people's lives. From the Access Chautauqua Studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Chautauqua. We are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week from 9 to 10 a.m. Send events via email or call us live. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. And now, from the Access Chautauqua Studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
Well, happy Saturday, everybody. Justin, it seems like we were just here. This week has just flown by. I don't know how it's for you folks, but yikes. I hope you're all doing well, and we have another interesting show in store for you today. We're going to be talking about addiction. You might say, well, why are you so excited? I'm excited to talk about addiction because I want to shed light more and more on this topic. I've often said that at the rate we're going, we don't need enemies to take over our country. A few more years from now, at the rate we're going, somebody could just walk through the door and take over the country because we're falling apart. So, we're going to talk really tough terms about addiction here in a little bit, so stay tuned. My guest is waiting in the wings, and we'll be with him shortly. So, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. A special shout out to my friends over in the Ukraine. Thumbs up, hang in there as always. Good morning, Natalia. Enjoy your post on Facebook, and She writes in a language I don't understand, so I always have to hit the translation button. So she does write very well in English as well, but that's just kind of a little joke there. I'm not sure. You'll have to tell me. Is it Ukrainian? Is it Cyrillic? I don't know what I'm reading. It's like all these little, really cool looking little characters. Okay, for those of you that are listening to me on WRFA 107.9, low power to the people in Jamestown, good afternoon. And for those of you watching right now, you can go to Jamestown area, listen to us again Tuesdays at 1 o'clock on WRFA. Thanks for having us, Jason Sample and Company. We are so proud to be part of your organization as well. I often mention this, but WRFA has some very interesting programming, and you can put on your phone an app for WRFA, and you can take this anywhere in the world. I've listened to WRFA in Europe when I was there, okay? So that's the nice thing about what we're doing. Also, I want to remind you that we stream live around the world. So I'm assuming we're across the United States right now, all the way down there. We are. I just got the thumbs up. We are streaming this week. We had a little issue a couple weeks ago. And I think even my baby brother who's watching right now just had to remind me it was 9 o'clock and where were we? So good morning, my dear little baby brother Bob. So if you are interested in the topic we're talking about this morning, or you have an announcement at your club or organization, want to say happy birthday, happy anniversary, anybody, like I'm going to do right now. Happy birthday to Mike from Portland, Mike Felsman. I just saw had a birthday, I think it was yesterday or the day before. So Mike, I know you watch just about every week, so happy birthday, Mike, and many, many more. If you want to give us a call, 716-753-5225. Now, you can always say, I'm calling for a friend. It works with my doctor. If I have an issue, I always say, well, I just want to ask you about this for a friend. He looks at me like, yeah, right. But don't be shy. And if you are shy, do call in. Please call in if you have a question that's like this burning thing that you need an answer for, or you need a resource, or where do you go for more information or help. Randy's on the other end of the line. He'll write down the question. They get it to me either through my earpiece or they hand it to me on a piece of paper, and we'll get your question out, okay? Remember also that if you watch the show and think, what was that guy's name? How do I get a hold of that person? What's the web page that I should go to? We rebroadcast the show 2 and 8 every single day. And also, you can go to Facebook, and it'll be on YouTube forever and ever. Okay, at least as long as YouTube is around. And as far as I know, all 442 shows are on YouTube as we speak. So, with that all being said, I want to just mention also, last week we lost 2 rockers. We lost another rocker this week. Oh man, David Crosby may not have been your favorite guy because he was ornery, but musicians are like that. And I worked with ornery musicians, and sometimes they're some of the best musical people. It's just they're hard to get along with. It's like being in a restaurant with the head chef and he's throwing things around and yelling, but he's a lovable guy on the inside. Well, anyways, a big loss to the music industry, and I grew up on the Byrds, and I played a lot of their material, and of course they were Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and that was really just a fine, fine group. Other than that, Mike says, oh, you're welcome, Mike. He is watching. The winter hasn't been too bad, I don't think. There's no shushing. I don't believe in superstition. It's been a nice winter. We were talking about this the other day. I've only worn my gloves, I think, once or twice this winter, and last winter, I think I did the same. So could be global warming, it could be cyclical, I'm not sure, but the only issue I have is this. Yesterday, and the day before, I watched my daughter's 8-month-old yellow lab plus Brody, who you always see in the beginning of the show. He's a little Tibetan Terrier. Well, they were out in the backyard running around in knee-deep mud, and the mud's flying everywhere. And so I had 2 dogs that needed a bath, and that was kind of a bummer. And then yesterday, the young dog decided he was going to be a polar bear. And we have fish gardens, little water gardens, and I'm watching him from inside the house, and all of a sudden he just like walks into the pond. Luckily, all I do is mop him down with a towel. But if you own a dog right now or any other animal that's outdoors, with the mud, it's pretty deep out there. But that's life here in Western New York. Too funny. Okay, we have some announcements, and then we're going to get to my guest and the topic we're going to discuss here shortly. So here we go. This is an interesting event that's been happening for a number of years, and we've been announcing it ever since I've been doing this. And this is called Doors Open Jamestown, and this is going to be next Saturday, January 28th. Okay? This is kind of a long announcement, but here we go. A myriad of attractions in the Jamestown region are once again pleased to host Doors Open Jamestown, Saturday, January 28th. The event provides a free day at local museums and attractions. Launched many years ago as a way to encourage local people, that's all of us, to visit the numerous museums and attractions available in the community. In a time that is normally a slow tourism season. Okay, so it's like a gift to the community, right? Doors Open Jamestown has become a highly anticipated day for participating organizations as well as for their guests. Our region is fortunate to be home to so many extraordinary attractions, and many of them are in the immediate Jamestown area. 17 attractions are participating this year. That's quite a few, featuring something for everyone, including, ready? Art, nature, sports, theater, history, and just a whole lot more. These amazing facilities look forward to this incredible open house day as they welcome area residents to see what they have to offer. Okay, here's the list. Here we go now. This is next Saturday. You can go to these places for free. The Audubon Community Nature Center over on Riverside Road. Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame. Our good friend Randy Anderson will be on here in a couple of weeks, and we'll be talking with him. He's the guy we always put our seatbelts on and hold on, right, Just? He just lights up the studio. The DAR House over on Prospect Street. Doubletree Jamestown, the hotel. Infinity Visual Performing Arts Center over at 301 East 2nd Street. If you haven't seen that facility, you got to go there. They're my good friends, and they just have a great facility. I'm sure they would love to show you what they have. The Jamestown Prendergast Library. When was the last time you were in the library? Be honest with yourself. I go to the library a lot because I'm on the library board in Ripley, but before that, you know, I do a lot of stuff online, but libraries still have that certain feel to it. It's just different. So check it out. The Lucille Ball Desjardins Museum over on number 2 West 3rd Street. Now, pre-registration is required, so if you want to go there, you got to contact them ahead of time so you get scheduled. Go to the Lucille M. Wright Air Museum at 110 West 3rd Street. Then there's the Lucille Ball Little Theater of Jamestown, 18 East 2nd Street. I'd never been there before. A number of years ago, I played there, and I didn't realize the facility was as big as it was. If you look at it from the street, it doesn't look very big, but then when you get down in there, it's like, holy cow, that holds a lot of people. And I'm sure they're going to have some really cool things going on there. The Martz Cole Observatory over in Frewsburg at 176 Robin Hill Road. I still got to get there yet because I love to look at the stars and the planets. The Marvin Community House, 2 West 5th Street. The National Comedy Center over on 2nd Street. Again, pre-registration required. So if you want to go there, make sure you give them a call probably this week to get scheduled. Go to the Northwest Arena, 319 West 3rd Street. Free public skating is from noon to 2. Okay. Pearl City Clay House over at 220 East 2nd Street. They're going to be on the show here soon. Okay, that's a new venue for arts and for people to explore. And I've seen some pictures. It looks fabulous. The Reg Linné Center for the Arts. Okay, if you haven't been there lately, it's gorgeous in there, and they show all kinds of great feature films, and we're going to talk about a couple in a minute. The Robert H. Jackson Center over 305 East 4th Street. If you haven't been in there, it's like going back in time. The architecture, the way it's furnished, and the decorative panels and things, absolutely gorgeous. Roger Torrey Peterson Institute, I played there this summer. What a gorgeous venue. Get over there and enjoy nature and all that sort of thing that they have to offer there, plus the artwork and so forth. Just great. All right, Jamestown Community Chamber Coordinator Carrie Swanson notes this. As we did last year, the Chamber of Commerce is running a Doors Open Jamestown text contest at all participating attractions and at a number of local businesses that have chosen to participate. Look for the text contest instructions at each venue and find out more information. Go to jtny.events. Don't know, you have to check it out. Contest prizes include items donated by all the local participating attractions. Okay, so that's coming up next Saturday. Now we have another slide here called a book donation. Earlier this month, the staff of the Waterfront Foundation in Jamestown we're presented with a donation to support the purchase of new books for pediatric patients of the Chautauqua Center, and we've had them on here a number of years ago. The Waterfront Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation established in 2019 to raise and manage funds and properties which support the mission, services, and programs of the Chautauqua Center Incorporated. The gift was presented by Ann Hedin, longtime member of Litwitz, a local book club comprised of 25 women who have been meeting together and supporting the community since the mid-1980s. Members of the book club regularly donate to literacy programs in the Jamestown area and recently added Read to Me, the TCC, to their list of recipients. As a book club, our great love is reading, and we do anything we can to foster a like-minded love, explained Anne. All right, Read to Me TCC was started by the Waterfront Foundation to promote reading and allow the Chautauqua Center to provide an extra level of support to pediatric patients. The connection between reading and healthcare is not very well known. However, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends providing books to children as an essential aspect of well childcare. Recent research shows reading failure disproportionately affects children from socially and economically disadvantaged families and contributes to continuing the cycle of poverty. And we've talked about that here. Reading is one of the most effective ways to develop language during early childhood and to gain the literacy skills required for school readiness. Because not every child in our area has access to a variety of books at home, pediatric providers at TCC Jamestown are proud to be able to provide new books to their patients. So that's kind of a cool agreement there, a working relationship. So good on all of you, and there's their picture, okay? All right, let's move on. This is an announcement more than a slide, and I'll just kind of read parts of it. In a remarkable statewide effort, the 13 downtown historic performing arts centers, including the Reginald A. Center for the Arts, have come together to form Alive Downtowns. This coalition, having met virtually since the start of the pandemic, is seeking an ongoing $20 million in operating support from the state. Their goal is to encourage New York lawmakers to think of the upstate historic theaters as they do zoos and aquariums and public television statewide. Ooh, that includes us. We're public TV. Organizations that have great public benefit to the citizens of the state. Alive Downtowns members are Bardavon 1896 Opera House in Poughkeepsie, the Clemens Center in Elmira, the Palace Performing Arts over in Albany, and it goes on and on and on. So combine these facilities that have an average age of nearly 100 years old, these facilities, and have been keystones to their receptive downtowns for all those years. They serve 5 million people annually, including thousands of students. Their aggregate budgets exceed $100 million, and their economic impacts for upstate major downtowns conservatively exceeds $350 million. So Jamestown is going to be part of all this, and that's pretty cool. So keep your eye open on this more and more as you're going to see this probably articles in the paper, and the Reginald A. Center for the Arts is part of that whole group. Okay, so good on the Reg, and hopefully we'll be sharing more information as they go along. Okay, a couple more and then we're done. Okay, Babylon and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever to show at the Reg Center for the Arts. We just mentioned them. Babylon is going to be shown this coming Wednesday at 7 o'clock in an original epic set in the 1920s in Los Angeles, led by a guy named Brad Pitt. I suppose you heard of him. Margot Robbie and Diego Calva with an ensemble cast including, oh boy, these are tough. Jovan Adepo, Lee Jun Lee, and Jean Smart. A tale of outsized ambition and outrageous excess. It traces the rise and fall of multiple characters during an era of unbridled decadence and depravity in early Hollywood. Show was rated R. It's 189 minutes long. Whew. Some of these announcements are tough to read. In Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. That's going to be next Saturday at 4 p.m. Queen Ramonda, Shuri, Baku, let's see, Okaya, and Dora, something or other, fight to protect their nation from intervening world powers in the wake of King T'Challa's death. As the Wakandans strive to embrace their next chapter, the heroes must band together with help of the war dog, Nakia, and Everett Ross, and forge a new path for the kingdom of Wakanda. Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is rated PG. It's 161 minutes long. Tickets are $7. You can go to the post. I keep saying post box office every week. It's the box office, or you can go to your phone and call them at 484-7070 for tickets. Then, then we have another slide, and this is just a quickie. Attention parents of children 0 to 12 years old. We have with the Prevention Works Group the Triple P Positive Pairing Program. Say that 10 times fast. Mondays at the Resource Center over in Dunkirk. You got from January 23rd, 10 a.m. to 12, dealing with disobedience. January 30th, same time, developing good bedtime routines. February 6th, 10 to 12, hassle-free shopping. On February 13th, 10 a.m. to 12, fighting and aggression. It's free of charge. If you're interested up that way, give them a call at 679-8946. And that's open to everybody in the county. And finally, Lakeshore Center for the Arts is putting together a production called Love Letters. It's starring two people, Joan Caruso and a guy named Doc Hamels. It'll be shown on February 10th, 11th, and 12th, performed I should say, not shown, and the 14th on Valentine's Day. I'll give you the times more later on, but tickets are $20. You can go on Lakeshore Center for the Arts .com and get your tickets. We did a read-through the other day, and I got to tell you, it's profound, and I think you'll enjoy it, so that's coming up soon in February. We're going to take a little breather, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping. Maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
What a great segue. Get your head out of the cloud, okay? And that's really a nice way to introduce what we're going to be talking about today is, folks, if you have not figured this out, we've got a crisis here in America, and you might say, well, that's in the big cities. No. I want to welcome to the show, first time, Steve Kilburn, who's with the Chautauqua County Department of Mental Health. Is that fair enough?
That's right.
Okay, I got that right. And we're going to be talking about addiction.
It's, like you said, it's a heavy topic, but it is so relevant.
Yeah. Before we get to that topic, who are you? I mean, we just met this morning, and where do you come from and all that good stuff?
Mm-hmm. Well, Steve Kilburn, and currently I do work, as you've said, at the county's Department of Mental Hygiene.
Just upstairs from here.
Same building.
We're neighbors.
We have been neighbors and hardly knew
We
it.
didn't even know it, yeah.
And been in the position I have now, which we'll talk more about as we go, but overseeing some federal grants that have been awarded to the county to address addiction. And done that for just about 4 years now. Been in Jamestown, Chautauqua County for, 30 plus years.
So you're not from here?
Not originally.
You're one of those outsiders.
Yeah.
I am too.
Although, as many of folks from the area, Jamestown has always been, in fact, it's really the one city in Chautauqua County, the one county in my life that's been kind of a consistent, literally from my earliest days. My parents were from here, and my grandparents actually both. My grandparents grew up. Folks from Jamestown will recognize Swede Hill. That's where my mom grew up.
Okay.
And so as kids, we were coming to Jamestown. I was born in Jamestown, actually.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, there you are. You're good. You're good.
So I'm okay. But
I'm the outsider.
But yeah, so been around. Chautauqua County is home to my wife and I, and our daughter is now a young adult living out of the state. But we're Chautauqua Countyans.
Okay, so how did you get into this? Did you go to college for this, or?
No, it would be the short answer to that. I did really a pre-med undergraduate degree. Kind of as many careers take, various circuitous routes. Worked for some time after well, after college I was in the Peace Corps, and that's actually during the time I was overseas. My parents retired to Jamestown, so that's where I came to Jamestown.
Okay.
There temporarily back in the late 80s. Still here, and
Never
don't
left.
plan to leave. But I began working at what was then WCA Hospital, and worked in their mental health units, also worked as a counselor in the emergency department for several years, and ultimately as a drug and alcohol counselor.
So
on
you have
inpatient
like
rehab.
a degree in something?
I
that's
was a
associated with it?
credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor.
So where do you get that?
That actually is awarded or I guess officially provided by the state.
Okay.
So it's not, it's a credential more than, I mean, it has, of course, some criteria, studies, et cetera, but it's not an academic, that isn't an academic degree. So
I'm not familiar with that. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
was asking you, because a lot of other people get a degree in something.
Yes.
But you obviously had the background and could get that credential.
Yep.
Okay, so that, all right. So what is mental health? I mean, we all talk about our physical health and we talk
Yeah.
about this and that, but I mean, that's sort of a broad.
Well, it is, and I mean, you could take any element of the sort of what we often call behavioral health, realm, usually meaning mental health and addiction issues. You could take any particular issue of it, and it would be very expansive. And it's, I think, probably a good principle to start even a conversation just about addiction. It's always complex. It's always more complicated, or at least more complex than perhaps we're even made to believe, or maybe we want to believe. But whenever we talk about struggles with mental health, with addiction, we're talking, number one, about something that isn't a simple condition. And the other thing that's really true about that whole realm of behavioral health issues, we're not talking about something that's rare. And again, this would be true in whether we're talking about any number of mental health disorders or addiction. Now, it may feel isolating when somebody's experiencing it. Certainly families that have had loved ones struggle with these things feel very alone. And again, we may talk a little bit more about that, but in fact, the prevalence of these sorts of things are such that, well, I try not to drop sort of too many numbers and data points with you, but if we were to take the numbers of folks even in our own county, and we have about 127,000, I think, residents.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Ballpark 100,000, say, adults, give or take. It's hard to estimate the numbers of people with really any medical or behavioral health disorder, just because it's can't necessarily measure those things directly. But there are ways to do pretty educated guesses.
Yeah.
So we could ballpark a number based on those informed estimates of probably around 15,000.
15,000 people
In
Chautauqua County?
would meet the criteria for a what we would clinically call a substance use
That
disorder.
would be,
15% of the adults.
well, I'm thinking in terms of where I live in Ripley, that would be like 7 Ripleys. That's incredible.
It's very prevalent.
You know,
And that, by the way, something like, wow, we're this like oddly concentrated county of, like, those numbers, ballpark, are the kinds of percentages that exist across the country. By
we
national,
we reflect the country.
we reflect the rest of the country. I mean, I think we need to acknowledge that economic disparities, et cetera, and other risk factors probably contribute to a higher percentage than the national average here, but not like twice the national average or something like that, just maybe slightly higher. Yeah. But, again, take that number, ballpark, 15,000 or so, and, consider those 15,000 with, if they had each 4, and that's, I think, pretty conservative, people that are close to them, that's 60,000 people.
So now we're talking almost about half of our county is being affected.
Even more.
Yeah.
Arguably, I would say most people in the county are what I would say 1 degree of separation away from addiction.
And we've talked about other issues, health issues, mental issues, physical issues here on the show. And it's the same thing. Is if we, for instance, we've talked about Alzheimer's, for instance, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but they weren't this high. But as you say, we forget that there's caregivers. There's people that are affected.
That's right.
They're embarrassed. They're caught up in the trauma. They're caught up in the everyday cycle of drama that goes on with this person's life, and they get sucked into that whole thing, right?
That's right.
But you said something that I thought was really poignant here. It's not rare. I do a lot of historical research in a number of places, and this has been going on forever.
Yes.
Mankind. I mean, as long as we've had more than two people on the face of the earth, someone's had an issue.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, as you say, it's complex. So it's not just, probably 100 years ago, they would just say, oh, just, stand up straight and fly right.
That's right.
Just straight, go home and get your head on straight. We're not talking, this is really complicated.
It's complex, it's powerful, it's so multifaceted.
Yeah.
And you're right, Doc. Addiction is not new, to say the least. But here is what is, I think, yes, this would be a new phenomenon that we are living in right now. And, well, one thing to say first, we're going to talk probably principally about issues related to drug addiction and overdoses, et cetera. You can't talk about this topic without talking about fentanyl,
Yes.
other opioids, as well as methamphetamine, cocaine, et cetera. That said, the two most deadly addictions remain tobacco or nicotine and alcohol.
Wait a minute. This is the one I always like to talk about because people don't believe me. I always say, do you know what the most addictive drug is in the world? And they go, they'll do the cocaine or the heroin. I say it's tobacco, and they go, no, it's not.
By far.
And I go, oh yes, it is.
Yes,
So-
by far. So we need to acknowledge that lest we lose sight of the bigger picture. Now, obviously, there are some differences in the progression of these addictions. Namely, many die after 40 years maybe of nicotine use, tobacco use, or an alcohol use disorder may take a couple of decades to fully advance to the place, as opposed to the kinds of the drug use, whether it's addiction, and in some cases not even an addiction, where the problem emerges. They tend to be, of course, very concentrated. So, but let me say what's different about alcohol. Obviously, tobacco been around, other addictive substances for generations, centuries. What we have today in our country and in our county is a reality where two of the not again yet, thankfully, the worst, insofar as they haven't reached the levels of nicotine, but certainly the very serious problems that we're having in our county with drugs and our nation. Fentanyl.
Yep.
And especially different places have different nuances with stimulants, some cocaine. Our county, our region seems to be more around methamphetamine. Those two, fentanyl and methamphetamine, are synthetic drugs. They have no agricultural basis whatsoever. And that's significant because whereas in previous generations, heroin, the poppy plant's been around for a long time, the cocoa plant, what have you. So, and those have been serious issues, heroin from the poppy plant, cocaine, the cocoa plant. But the complexities of getting something from an agricultural area with all the vagaries of weather, interdiction, et cetera, through a process by which it reached the streets of say, America, was far longer, far more difficult, far more complex.
So let me see if I got you straight. Basically, from farm to market, it took a long time to get an agricultural-based drug to the person.
And now we have
But now it's a different story.
that can be mass-produced.
In the back of your car. Because I know they do that with meth.
Conceivably, right. These are, lab. I say that with sort of scare quotes because they don't meet what you and I would think of as a lab, but they're the combination of legitimate chemicals, industrial grade chemicals that can be purchased in huge quantities legally year-round and used then to mass manufacture fentanyl and methamphetamine, which again are two of the most sort of devastating drugs that we're facing right now.
Okay, so I'm very familiar because of discussions we have had about meth production.
Yes.
And I wasn't kidding. I know of situations where people were making meth in the back of their car, all right? Or they're making it in somebody's garage, and,
Yeah.
and it has a wicked smell, and blah, 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 blah. And you usually can tell someone who's been doing it because of their color of their skin or whatever. This is new to me about the fentanyl. I did not know that people make fentanyl. So
People make fentanyl.
Let's talk about that a little
yeah,
bit.
and you know, probably in the 1990s, if I'm remembering my sort of sequence of events more, we would have, all of us, you know, heard about various arrests of somebody making methamphetamine in their home, a trailer, or what have you. Actually, that really kind of market forces, if you will, kind of altered that. Today, you don't hear that, or at least rare would you hear that somebody has been arrested and found to be producing methamphetamine, and this would be true of fentanyl too. It's typically not being manufactured locally anymore, and it is a kind of a market force thing where the production costs in mass, a different form. That you know, today if you want to go and get oh gosh, what is it? Cold medicine of some kinds. You know, you got to get a card, you got to go to the desk, etc. Right. So that
with the D in it, right?
Exactly. So those over-the-counter medications were being used in the previous production process for the methamphetamine that was being made locally. So that's off the shelf. It's now being produced in a different process, same ultimate product in the end, largely coming into the U.S. Via Mexico. So fentanyl, you asked about, though. That is also, at this point at least, principally being manufactured, if that's the word, in Mexico and shipped in the United States. Fentanyl is an opioid, meaning it's in the same class of drug as the legitimate, you know, pharmaceuticals like oxycodone, hydrocodone, etc. In fact, fentanyl itself has legitimate medical uses for pain. It's a very potent pain reliever. Heroin is also an opioid. So fentanyl is in that class of drugs. But in addition to being able to be made en masse using, you know, combinations of chemicals, cooking, what have you, it is also highly potent.
I've heard that.
Very, you know, the typical terms or stats that are used, 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. Ooh. So, you know, here, just again, think of it as a market kind of demand and forces. You've got a more concentrated drug, which means it can be shipped easier, produced in far greater quantities and not dependent upon supply chain as much. Agriculture, you know, interdiction becomes far more difficult, etc. And so that has really hit the streets, and I'd say the streets, I mean, urban and rural areas in America, and with devastating consequences.
Okay, so people are watching right now, listening on the radio. If they were out on the street and somebody came up to them and offered them meth or fentanyl or something along those lines, I don't even know what it looks like. I mean, how does it come?
Well, you know, I'm probably candidly not the best capable of describing that question either, except to say something very important, a couple things very important. One, it would possibly, for those who have a history of, say, heroin use, look similar to the heroin that they were once purchasing from, you know, illicitly. Heroin has, for the reasons that I've already mentioned, has virtually disappeared in the sales. People will say, I bought heroin. People might be told this is heroin. What we're finding in the data that we have from our county, and true in other places as well, nothing unique, it's not heroin. This is a product that will become the beta video phenomenon. It's going to be a once upon a time product, which is quite a surprise for people. You think, well, heroin is gone. Yes, it's been replaced by fentanyl.
Something worse.
Something worse, exactly. Worse in large part because the concentrations of it, of course, there's no quality control in these matters. So the potency of any given drug supply is kind of a roll of the dice. The other thing I want to say relative to your question about methamphetamine, I think looks like, I'll probably be corrected about this, but like kind of a white crystalline.
I heard that. Okay.
Yeah. But the other phenomenon that's been developing over the last few years is the what we would call lacing these other drugs like methamphetamine, like cocaine, with fentanyl. So methamphetamine, cocaine, these are stimulants. The opioid is a depressant, a central nervous system depressant. Very different classes of drugs, but the fentanyl drug dealers have begun, and I mean it's pretty expansive now. In fact, it is so pervasive in the drug supply that anybody using an illicit drug should assume that they're getting fentanyl.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to think this through here a little
Yes.
bit with you. All right. Kid grows up, normal life, went to school, and the next thing you know, somebody offers them something. It has to start somewhere.
Yes.
At a point, at a party, someone says, here, try this or whatever. So if they're using or taking in fentanyl, what does it do to you?
Well, let me answer that, and then I want to circle back to
Yeah,
how
sure.
do these things start. Well, if you've been ever prescribed an opioid, a hydrocodone, an oxycodone, that would be the phenomenon. Although, of course, with something like fentanyl, magnified.
Yeah.
It's a kind of relaxed feeling, a kind of unanxious. I don't know. I'm probably at a loss for the right adjective.
So
but
it leaves you with a nice euphoric feeling.
Exactly. There's a euphoria associated with it. It's not a stimulant, so people don't tend to behave in necessarily on an opioid alone in anything other than really kind of a sort of like
Can they
euphoric,
function?
chilled out. Well, if they don't overdose.
But I mean, if someone uses fentanyl right now,
Yes.
can they drive a car correctly? Can they?
Some people could.
All right.
Depending on the dose,
So it's really-
their tolerance,
it's like anything else
etc.
then.
And that kind of brings us back to like, well, how does this even get started?
There you go.
I mentioned earlier, complexities of addiction are such that we can't. Every time we try to apply some, well, this is always the case, we'll find that to be a falsehood.
No such thing.
No such thing. So yes, there are those who kind of enter into ultimately an addiction, an opioid use disorder, as we'd call it, via kind of recreational, drug use. Try this, did that, etc. And to be sure, that is one path in, and it is why awareness and prevention for young people especially is so important. But it's not really the only way. And by that, I mean, there are those for whom legitimate pain is a driving factor, physical pain. In America, we often talk sort of about waves of the opioid crisis, but the first of those waves is attributed to the overprescribing of legitimate pharmaceutical opioids.
So if you're in a car accident and you've got a bad, we were talking about our backs earlier, a bad
Yes.
back or leg, doc says, here, try this,
Yes.
and all of a sudden now you're saying, I feel really
Now,
good.
today, the avenue of overprescribed opioids is far less likely than it would have been in the, say, 90s, early
Right.
2000s, because there is there's oversight and there's a vastly greater awareness that in spite of what was being purported, oxycodone, for example, is very addictive.
Right.
So it's less likely that somebody's going to get overprescribed it. But to your point, yes. And if that chronic pain doesn't resolve and a person has, I guess, a genetic predisposition, when the sort of the forces combine,
Right.
then the potential for developing an addiction and what does happen, especially those for whom that first wave of prescribed opioids got them addicted, when that gets shut down, then many of them resorted to illicit opioids on the streets.
Okay.
And so that path of people with pain that couldn't be managed, wasn't managed, what have you, is another very real, path.
Separate group, though.
A separate group, arguably, yes.
Yeah.
But however people kind of get into it, once into it, it's a bear.
How do you get out?
Again, there are probably as many stories of recovery as there are people in recovery. But that said, in fact, there are some, I think, typical paths or typical elements, let's say, to the path out for most people, especially with something as severe as an opioid use disorder. Some kind of help and treatment is typically going to be needed. There will be people that pretty much said, I got to stop this, and really through a great struggle, managed to do that. But we would really, because for perhaps as many or more that do that, others try, and the power of the addiction just is such that a kind of self-willed attempt just doesn't have success. So we would encourage people to reach out for help. And this is a message I really appreciate this venue to be able to share. There is help available in Chautauqua County for, let's just focus, it's true for all addictions, but opioid use disorder. There are multiple clinics where people could go to get treatment. In fact, folks could actually call a telehealth number 24/7 and be screened by an addiction specialist, and if criteria is met, would have a prescription for a very effective medication treatment for opioid disorder called Suboxone, or buprenorphine is the generic name. It would be a 2-week prescription provided for them over the phone, and a referral then to a clinic. So they could get started on a medication. We want to make this as accessible as possible, that no barriers of an appointment, of travel, or what have you.
And no value judgment.
And no value judgment.
You're not bad, you're not good, it's just,
absolutely.
we want to help. So what's that number?
Well, the best place to get that number and other information about resources in Chautauqua County for addressing opioid use disorder or any other addiction is to go to a website that we've had up now for, most of the time that I've been employed. This is combataddiction.chq.com. I think we have a visual with just the logo. And this is a shot of the website itself, right? So combataddiction.chq.com. And on the website, there's various information generally about addiction. If you look up at some of the tabs that are on the upper right, you'll see Find Help. And on that page, a person can search for resources that are in the area, including that hotline, virtual hotline for medication-assisted treatment. And there's also a banner on that website, by the way, that in crisis, whether it's the person with an addiction, their loved one, when we're in the lower left corner is the banner, or I guess a button that I'm referring to. When we're in a crisis, it's very hard to figure out a path forward. A medical condition, or in this case, an addiction. Where do I go? Who do I call? What's the right place to start? What's it going to require? We just put a button on there. If you need help finding help, we'll help you get there.
All right, so this is that blue button at the bottom?
That little blue button on the bottom left. If you go there, it's a contact form, so it would email us, and we will respond fairly quickly and say, hey, how can we help direct you? We'll make sure you get to that appointment in the right place.
Okay, for those listening on the radio right now, you go to the Combat Addiction CHQ, that's all one word, .com.
Yep.
And then you come up on a website. And there's a bridge, it looks like the over Chautauqua, actually.
It is.
And there's a kind of an oval blue button at the bottom, and need help finding help is the button. You hit that, and up comes a bunch of stuff.
It comes up a contact form.
Okay.
You fill that out, and somebody will get back in touch with you via phone or email to say, we'll walk alongside you to make sure you get that appointment you need.
Okay, so people that are listening right now are going to, I'm not filling out that form because you're going to be sharing this with the police. Where does this information go?
To me, and that's all. No, I of course, I can understand there would be a concern of that sort. No, absolutely not. Doc, one thing too that ought to be noted in our county, but really, again, our county representing national trends, law enforcement wants to help people get into treatment.
Yeah.
Our sheriff, who you may know,
Yeah.
is very committed to that very thing. Again, you submit your name, a contact number on our website. Nobody in law
Always gonna be
enforcement, nobody in law enforcement is going to get that. But I do want to make the point to say that even those who do find themselves in the criminal justice system are also being urged and provided with opportunities
Great.
to get treatment.
We have a phone caller.
Great.
Ready? Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Jack.
Oh, Linda.
Good morning, Steve. This is Linda Spalding.
Hi, Linda.
Steve, thank you for coming on. This is such valuable information, and it's such a very much needed service here and everywhere else. My grandson Aaron died in November,
Yes, we did.
and
so sorry.
And my other grandson Nick said that there's no one to blame for his death than mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Aaron's twin sister Angel started a foundation
Really?
to raise money for children who are mentally ill.
What's the name of that, Linda?
Oh, I
Well, sometime
remember
call it
the
in.
name of the foundation, but they did a performance
Mm-hmm.
on the 18th. Nick and Angel helped organize it. Nick and Kevin from the Backstreet Boys
Mm-hmm.
and some other entertainers.
Wow.
And Nick wrote a song, and you can get it on YouTube. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to pay anything for it. It's called "It Hurts to Love You."
Mm-hmm.
It's very beautiful, and it shows in the video pictures of Nick and Aaron when they were children.
Wow.
And,
Well,
you know,
hearts go out to your family. We haven't
Yeah,
really
oh,
talked about this, but I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, but mental illness is there, and people shouldn't be ashamed of it.
Yes.
It's just like when when we have a cold or we have a flu or we have something else, it needs attention, and people really do need to realize this and address it. And there definitely are mental health issues with children and adolescents.
Linda, first, condolences, really. Gosh, there are, families across the country. There are way too many families in our own county who, like you, bear the loss of a loved one to addiction and mental health struggles. And you make a very good point that the overlap between mental health issues and addiction is very great. I didn't and should have made mention of that earlier. I talked about people kind of getting into the sort of the bonds of addiction through a physical health need that kind of brings them to a point where they're actually addicted. But mental health struggles as well, undertreated or not treated, I guess we might call self-treated, is another path into the use of illicit
And
drugs.
it's an invisible issue.
Yeah, sadly, it is. And as I said, it is not rare.
Yeah.
It is not rare. But it is, in Linda's family's experience, sadly tragic. People would be surprised to know, many people I think would be surprised to know, over the last couple of years in Chautauqua County, on average, we lose about one of our county residents, one of our neighbors, if you will, every week.
Yeah.
To
I
a
see
drug
that in the
overdose.
obituaries.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really so tragic. And there's something else I'd like to add.
Sure.
Johnson. I don't want to hold up your show because
Oh, you're fine. You're
so
fine.
fascinating. But Johnson & Johnson had the baby company.
Mm-hmm.
They had a lawsuit against them
Right.
because they had fields in Australia where they grew 80% of the opioids and brought them over here.
Really?
Really.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's, as you said, it is a complicated issue.
It is a very
It's so
complex problem. We had
layers.
a graph just on the screen. If we could maybe bring that back up. I just, I want to underscore for all of us how severe. Really, a crisis is the right term. We had a bar graph that.
There we go.
There it is. Yeah. So what you're looking at here are just bar graphs from 2003 up until 2021 of the numbers of opioid-related deaths.
Well,
in
and
the
this
country.
speaks to what you just said, Steve. If you look, you said it was like one a week. Your graph shows about
Exactly.
50 in the year, so that'd be one a week.
That's right. And this pattern, first of all, of a just staggering climb in the numbers of deaths. And of course, death is sort of the most, of course, tragic consequence of addiction, but there's all kinds of other consequences.
yes.
But this is, really the worst. So look at this really staggering trend upwards. And but you see a little dip there, 17, 18, and 19. It goes down and then significantly bumps up again. If we look at another slide here, we'll see the very same pattern in New York State.
Oh, there you go.
And the nation as a whole. So these are opioid-related deaths. It's not quite the same time frame. It's 2010 here to 2021.
Looks pretty darn similar, doesn't it?
Very similar. What is true in the nation, what is true in the state, is true in our county. That blip, by the way, I say a blip, I mean, it's a little bit more, that dip is probably related to speak to the complexities, geopolitical phenomenon, where China did begin to crack down on fentanyl manufacturers within China.
Wow.
And then subsequently, though, the production of fentanyl
Switched to Mexico.
to Mexico, actually using, so I read, chemicals, legitimate industrial chemicals that are coming out of China. So there's a kind of supply chain there. But that, as much as anything, probably accounted for that dip. But now, as a nation, as a state, as a county, we have just seen these increasing numbers of deaths.
Wow. Well, Linda.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to hang up now, but thank you again.
Thank you for calling, Linda.
Yeah, and please let me know on that foundation, or give me the information next week or something, Linda. Okay?
Yeah, I think they raised quite a bit of money. I think it was something like $150,000 or something like that.
Okay. Well, do let us know that. All right. Thanks for calling and sharing that. I know that's tough.
And look that up on YouTube. It hurts to love you.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care. We got 2 minutes left.
We've got way more to talk about than time exists.
You're coming back. You're coming back.
So maybe if I could just try to underscore a couple of things, takeaways that this conversation can leave folks with. Number one, the prevalence of whether we're talking about addiction, broadly, whether we're talking about opioid use disorder, which is the thing that's gotten much of the attention. Need to acknowledge that methamphetamine is also a very serious issue in our county. We actually need to acknowledge that in most of the deaths that are experienced, it's multiple drugs are involved. But we need people to understand, first of all, the severity, how widespread the issue really is. It's serious and it's complex. That we cannot allow ourselves the temptation to just sort of apply a stereotype and say, oh, that it happens, across the age span and to various folks. But perhaps more important than any of that, I would like to make sure that we just underscore today that there is help available of all kinds, at all levels, if you will. And the resources that we have in Chautauqua County are best found at combataddiction.chq.com. And again, if even looking there, because it's complex, you can reach out for personal help, and if you would. We're looking at a slide now that includes the logos of the many agencies that work together under this partnership that my role oversees on behalf of the whole county. So these are agencies, Doc, you'd be familiar with many of the directors and otherwise of these. And we partner with other agencies as well, but those are the principal addiction-related services. We're meeting constantly. Every month we have a formal meeting. We're interacting a lot.
All right, folks, we're going to do this. We're coming back. I'm bringing you back. Steve Kilburn's been my guest today. He's works for the Department of Mental Health, and the name of your agency is?
Well, Department of Mental Hygiene, and I would just say combataddiction.chq.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, folks, please, if you have any questions or concerns, As a family member, a friend, go to combataddiction.chq.com, find out more information, and we will bring you back. You and I have just nicked the surface here. Have a lovely weekend. Think about what we talked about today. Share this information. Share this video. This could save a life, folks. Take care. Stay warm, and we'll see you again next week right here on Chautauqua Sunrise. I'm Doc Hamels. Take care.